I have an observation, I suppose, to start with, then we'll get to some questions, is a bit of a compare and contrast to our focus last week, which was Ellenbrook in the city of Swan, and how sort of almost a generation later, that award-winning development has become like a regional centre to, the developments to the north and south, but it's missing that regional level infrastructure. And I think, what came out of that presentation was that it was never planned to be a regional centre. So, back in the day, there wasn't that consideration given to linking up the developments around Ellenbrook. And I suppose I can observe that generation later, this is the new way of doing things, where you are linking all of those surrounding areas into that regional centre. And, just ask for your observations on that, and given your decades of experience collectively, how have you seen that progress and we've come to this new model? Rachel?
Yeah.
Either Rachel, yep.
I did all the planning for Ellenbrook back in the day, and yes, you are right. It was never done because the PSPs or the ICPs or DCPs were all done via just that, and it wasn't looking to link it in. I suppose for me is that at the officer level, we were always talking together about, we never saw the borders. We were thinking about the whole Northern Corridor and about how one move impacted and others, and where there was gaps and how we could work together to achieve the outcomes that we needed to. So I suppose this is an extension of that. But also too is, yes, it is a new way. And we definitely always think now about the regional partnership. We don't think about how, that the borders are such a boundary. So.
Very good. Okay, we've been joined now by the Mayor, Councillor Huile, and Sheena Frost, the CEO, and to tie in with the question that's come in through the chat about anticipating more interest and funding from state and federal governments, given this is a new regional model and across municipal boundaries. A question to the Mayor, what has the political reaction been to this arrangement?
Oh, well, the good news is, Bronwyn, that it's really twofold. On the one hand, politically across other councils, in that sense, there's been so much interest from so many of my own colleagues who have been in touch to say, hey, it's good that we can recognise that the world doesn't stop at our own borders and that we can, beyond just talking about collaboration, actually put in train governance and processes to be able to do that. So on that side of things, it's been very encouraging. And I'd say the same, especially from our colleagues in the state and federal government. Rachel and Sheena and I, as I mentioned in my introduction, have already met with the planning minister and raised these matters and growth challenges a number of times. And I think both from the planning minister's level, including at the senior bureaucracy level, what we put to them was very well received as fresh thinking, innovative thinking, and something that could bear fruit. And so I'm very optimistic about the fact that I think, that our colleagues at the state and federal government hopefully will come on board, but especially the state government, but also that a partnership like this provides an inspiration for other councils. It doesn't have to be in planning. It could be in partnerships in a whole range of things to work together. I think that cross collaboration is the way of the future. That's not to say it's not being done now. It certainly is, and local government has always been, I must say, a leader in that sense. But what we're trying to do is not only collaborate with each other, we're trying to collaborate with the development sector, with other levels of government, and also the whole range of stakeholders that are required to build a city, in effect. Schools, and Teresa referred to some of them before: school, education, social services, healthcare services, etc., etc. That's what we're trying to achieve. So it's ambitious, but the good news is that we've had a very positive reaction to date, and I'm hopeful that reaction bears fruit into the future.
Great, thank you. And my next question, and then we'll jump to the one on social and affordable housing, but my next question is for Teresa, really, and for others. I mean, Stockland is a very large and very sophisticated company that has a really ambitious focus on livability, as you said in your 20 years wish list. What do you think the capacity is, or the interest would be, or the model that could be developed for councils who are dealing with a number of smaller developers? You know, I remember the anecdote from Mount Barker District Council in South Australia that had 15 development sites and 15 developers, and you know, so not everyone has that really positive relationship with the large developer who can achieve those things. What's some advice on working with smaller developers?
That's a really good question. I think that with the larger developers, there are a few of them in Victoria, and I think as we up our game, everybody else will, so that with that rising tide, everybody sort of comes up in the rising tide. And I feel as though if we continue to lead the way and be ambitious and achieve these stretch targets, that you can't get left behind. It's a very competitive industry. It's a very competitive market. We're all doing our best to try and attract you know, the customers that are out there and that want to live in these communities. And in order to do that, we need to show that we are a morally and ethically sort of and sustainable organisation, and that we have that's a mandate for us, and we have to achieve that, and that's our license to operate. Is to behave in that way. And I believe that, you know, if we continue to lead that others will have no choice but to follow, otherwise they become uncompetitive.
Sounds great. And you know, I wonder if there are other developers working in Hume City Council and feeling a bit of that pressure, although I'm sure the team at Hume you know, approach any new development with those high standards. So anyone from Hume would like to comment on that?
Thanks, Bronwyn. I mean, we're probably a little bit blessed. We have some very large developers, as Teresa's indicated, in Hume that we deal with, that are all pretty sophisticated and mature and big land holdings. So we work with those, but we also have, you know, the in between, you know, some smaller sort of second tier, if you like, and then more at the mums and dad level. But in our view is we're highly facilitative, and we'll talk to anyone, and we're happy to entertain proposals, obviously within the planning scheme. And but you know, everyone gets an opportunity to put their case. Whether they get the answer they want is a whole other thing. But we pride ourselves in being highly facilitative.
Absolutely. And so to jump to the question then around the broader catchment and social and affordable housing, and I'd like to tie that in maybe to Gavin and the Beveridge Northwest Resilience Plan in your municipality. And I know a big part of that was about diversity and the benefits of diversity. So, you know, do you have any comments on, you know, how the developments around the Cloverton MAC will assist this recent push for social and affordable housing provision?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's no secret there is a huge national shortage. What we're finding more particularly in Mitchell too is there's a demand for the type of housing that typically we don't often see delivered. So that's 1 and 2 bedrooms. For us, the Metropolitan Activity Centre is going to hopefully provide a solution to some of those shortages. Rachel and I have worked very hard to ensure that on the ground of most of this regional infrastructure is future-proofing it, so we can then develop the air rights above it. Now, that's not unusual. People and councils have been looking at air rights, but this is about making sure, you know, there's appropriate entry and space in the ground floors that integrate themselves well into regional infrastructure. So people feel that they still have that ownership and ability to move in and amongst those different pieces of infrastructure. We're also hoping that as we look into Mitchell, up further north, we'll have Lockerbie North, which is a smaller town centre that will be hopefully anchored by a train station, similar to what the MAC will have. But again, we're looking at how we can encourage retail footprints and other commercial footprints to develop into encouraging affordable housing above them as well. So innovation is key. And it's really about saying, well, if we're going to build something, let's make it work a bit harder, get more value out of it, and make sure that we're providing something that will benefit all, not just the few.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good segue to my next question to Sheena, actually, around working and I sort of know the three councils involved and know that they're all very forward thinking and open to new ideas and innovation, and so I just wanted to learn a bit more about, from that executive level, of where the idea germinated and how you got those three councils, CEOs, and then moving on to their councils and administrators to really see the value of this and to commit to it fully, which I know they have 100% commitment.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Yeah, good. Makes me think. Good question. So Cloverton, obviously the history would have preceded myself coming in, and we're actually all relatively new-ish. All of us probably maximum has been there probably 4 years. So relatively new base and coming together. And whether that has something that's an influence in helping bring that forward. But really, the northern region generally, I will say, coming in, there's a very strong alliance of 7 northern councils. So Hume, Mitchell and Whittlesea happen to be 3 of those. And I can say a lack of ego amongst all CEOs really helps. So in the spirit of just wanting to get stuff done and realising that we have shared, there's no borders here, everyone's got some skin in the game. And that really helped. Obviously, the officers had enormous enthusiasm, and all the, the directors and officers, I can see Rachel and, Gavin there, just sort of that enthusiasm and drive and understanding the opportunity with Stockland. There was a compelling case. So, I think for Craig, Brett and I, the natural instinct is, well, let's just work together and make stuff happen. And the really building it together with the council meeting process was just an opportunity from the Act, and it just made sense to try and hardwire in that goodwill and intent to send a really great signal to the state government, and absolutely thrilled that there was such genuine passion and enthusiasm from the elected councillors around this. I mean, it was never in question, and so perhaps for us, we could have done it perhaps a lot sooner than we thought. I don't think we ever thought it was in question, but the passion and enthusiasm for all the elected representatives, I think because we have experienced pain points of when it doesn't work. And so we all want to make sure we do what we can, and we know when we look back in 5-10 years, we will have done all that we can to try and make sure we deliver the outcomes that Teresa's talked about, that we know that we'll have given everything we can. So I think they would be the elements. Really, it's that kind of ego, spirit of goodwill, intention, and there's probably a lot to be said of just genuine goodwill and intent amongst everyone involved.
Wonderful. And I know from an NGAA perspective, we'll certainly be taking this example forward of just how useful and valuable local government is in meeting some of our housing targets and facilitating social and community resilience and sustainability. And I think one of our main goals over the next little while is to ensure state and particularly federal government really comprehend the value that local government brings to the table and the capacity that we have for delivering great outcomes. So before I wrap up, just wondered if Rachel Dapron, who I know has coordinated this response, or others would like just one final comment before I wrap up for the day.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Really just to say thank you for the platform and the opportunity. I know I love coming along to these events and learning different case studies and examples. So hopefully if there's anyone who's tuned in, I'll pick up a little bit of inspiration. But any other thoughts that people have out there, we're all ears, because we're still building the plane as we're flying it. We're still relatively early in the journey. We've got a master plan to do. We've got a trial we're proposing to state government. So we're sort of open to all ideas and suggestions to make sure we really get this right. But really just thank you for the platform and chance to talk about what is an emerging idea, but a big passion, as you can see, across all of us in terms of what we want to deliver. But ultimately, it's all about the future community. So
yes, absolutely. And thank you. And I know a number of our councils have, a room full of people at the moment watching this. It's a quite a professional development activity. So I hope there's some great inspiration that comes out of this too. So a very big thank you to the Hume City Council team and Gavin from Mitchell Shire Council and Teresa from Stockland. This has been a fantastic example, and obviously one that's internationally recognised, as we know from Rachel and Gavin presenting at the conference. So thank you so much for all that you did to pull this together, and we're really looking forward to helping advocate for what else is needed from state and federal government to make this the success that we all want it to be. So thank you very much.